Today's episode is brought to you by First Detachment. Are you looking for a supplement brand that truly understands hardworking athletes? Look no further than First Detachment. 1D's real world experience is what I would consider, and they consider, battle tested. I have known Justin Harris for pretty close to 2 decades. And if there's anybody that I trust with nutritional and supplement needs, it's Justin Harris. If you guys have followed me and have followed the podcast, you pretty much already know how I feel about the supplement industry. For me to get behind any brand, I have to trust the brand and I have to trust the person both. And I'm pretty sure you guys all know why. When it comes to creating formulas and putting products on the market, and there's nobody that I trust more than Justin Harris. While I love all of their products, I'd suggest that you check out the Field Rations and WTH first. Go to www.firstdetachment.com and use the code TableTalk10 to save 10% off each order. The link is in the description. You guys are selecting Merrick for your telehealth platform needs. They have a couple different ways that they go about doing this. The first is through a self-selected experience. So there's a Table Talk panel, which is the full panel. That would be the panel that I personally get twice a year. That's checking everything. You name it, it's all there. The other panel is a checkup panel with a guided optimization. You're connected with a patient care coordinator, and the patient care coordinator will meet with you to determine what your needs are, thing to be able to help optimize your health or mitigate without judgment. So the discount code again is Table Talk Merrick Health for all your hormone optimization and performance needs. Today's episode is brought to you by Element, a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything that you need and nothing that you don't. In other words, no sugar, no artificial coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, and no BS. With Element, I love the watermelon. The watermelon tastes freaking awesome. I drink 1 pack every day, no matter what. People that train out here, it's sitting out here for them all the time. The boxes don't last very long. Right now, Element is offering Table Talk listeners a free sample pack with any purchase. That's 8 single-serving packages free with any Element order. Get yours at drinkelement.com/Table Talk. The deal is only available through the link in the description. The other thing is, if you don't like it, you can just give it away to a salty friend and Element will give you a 100% refund. No risk, money back guarantee. Head over to drinkelement.com/Table Talk.
Today's episode is brought to you by EliteFTS.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help EliteFTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of us for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, EliteFTS has it. What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the EliteFTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, so we were on the weightlifting thing, so I'm going to use that and I'm going to segue into this 330 Isabel that you did. So when did you do that first off? Because I didn't look hard enough to find that, but how did you train for that then?
So I did that at the very end of 2020. I think, yeah.
So your skill at that point with that where was that on the scale of skills of doing a snatch?
So at that point, I had been doing weightlifting for 5 years.
All right, so decent, pretty good on the upper end.
Yeah, I would say from a technique standpoint, I would say at 1 year I was pretty good.
Okay.
One year was quite good. The difference in technique is that for someone that grew up weightlifting, and they started off when they were, not that strong. They were introduced to the snatch pretty soon into their weightlifting. From a skill standpoint, you get to take way more max attempts. You get to get way more comfortable being near your max than if you're already starting off strong. So you get to build that feeling when you're doing like a 100-pound snatch of all of that struggle, all of that feeling of what it's like. But you can get all that practice in as you're getting stronger.
Yeah. You can kind of also learn how to recover faster when things go a little off.
Yeah. So when you're, let's say you're snatching 150 pounds, you get to take all these max attempts and refine your skill so that once you add the general strength, if the snatch doesn't feel any different when there's more weight on the bar, the shit all feels the same. So no matter what the weight, I mean, there's some differences once you factor in bar oscillation, you factor in all these things. But from a basic standpoint, if it's a max, it's a max. I don't give a shit what's on the bar. It feels heavy. It sucks. I'm doing all the same stuff. But had you learned early on, you get over that hump and you have years of practice of what that feels like. So once you add in the general strength, like, okay, now I have a big squat and a big strength base to work off of. Yeah, the numbers are higher, but it doesn't feel that much different from when you're clean and jerking 400 pounds. It's not going to feel that much different from when you were clean and jerking 200. So for me, I missed all that.
Mm-hmm.
I was starting off with this big base of strength. Now, when I take a max attempt to learn how to take those max attempts, this beats the shit out of me. Like, I don't have that. I don't have that room for error. I don't have that. Every single max attempt is so valuable because this is going to create so much fatigue that I'll spend all this time warming up and all this time getting ready for it, because I don't have the luxury of getting tons of max attempts, because each one, and you only learn the lifts at max intensity. You don't learn the lifts half-assing it with a PVC pipe and doing all this. You learn when you're expressing all of your strength trying to do the movement. So at that point, sure, when the weight is a little lighter, when we're talking 70%, 80%, 90%, my technique is really sharp. Looks great. The untrained eye is going to look at it and be like, wow, that was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
To the trained eye, and especially on camera, you can see that when I cross a certain threshold, all these little fucking things pop up, and they're small and they're hard to fix unless you're at a max weight. There's just no way to fix that shit if you're not really struggling and doing your best on the bar. Those skills I needed to learn when I was young, when the weights weren't that heavy. Now that I'm trying to learn, now that I'm trying to learn it and there's 350 plus pounds on the bar, that's fucking hard to learn because you're wearing yourself out on those attempts. If I was learning it when I could only snatch 150 pounds, I would have had those skills early. Now when you add the strength, that refined technique at the max would be there. So when it comes to snatching for reps, you can take a strongman out of the sport, but you can't take strongman out of the guy. So I would do these totally stupid workouts because that's what anyone that's hung out with strongmen for any period of time know, that these guys are fucking nuts. They love doing shit just because they said they did it. Yeah. Just to say, fuck it. We want to go down as a legend. So when I was at Oregon State, I remember Grant Higa was up on the wall at one of the restaurants. And I used to go in there multiple times a week because it's the best restaurant in town. And I used to look up at Grant Higa on the wall and be like, fuck, I want my picture right above Grant Higa on that wall. So we do shit just to say we did it, just to put it out there. And sometimes, it's a crazy weight. Sometimes it's a crazy endurance feat. You just do it just to say you did it. Yeah. So snatching for reps, I could do really well because I didn't need that really high-end technique. Your technique doesn't have to be refined to the point that it does for a great max. Yeah. So if you lower the weight a little bit, now, well, I'm really fucking good at this because I don't have those little technique faults that hold me back. And so when you're talking about that level, those little tiny faults might be 20 pounds on the bar. And 20 pounds when you're already moving that weight is a big fucking gap.
Mm-hmm.
But if we lower it a little bit, well, you're going to have a hell of a time competing against a guy that loves doing this shit. And that's the sport he was in.
Yeah.
A sport that's heavy ass weight for reps. So as part of that, as part of leading up to that workout, one of my common workouts was I would do a lot of EMOMs. And I would go off of the pre-exhaustion principle. So, you know, if you break the lift down and think of it in phases, you can also break it down and think of it in body parts. Mm-hmm. So my legs could handle this weight of a snatch. My back can only support this much weight. My shoulders can support this much weight. So if you have these gaps in there mm-hmm. where your legs are really fucking strong, your shoulders are weak as hell. Well, how do I get that where I want those to be balanced out? Now I can refine my technique a little bit better because you'll notice that when you do the lifts, one body part will take over and your mm-hmm. technique sucks. So a guy with a big overhead press, when you jerk, you always push too early. You can't, it's just such a bitch to try to use the legs because you're so used to pressing. So how do I get over that? Well, if I go blow my shoulders up first, and so now instead of this big 300-pound press, my shoulders are so tired, I'm only pressing like 275. Now I can use my legs. Like now my legs are fresh, my legs are strong, my shoulders feel like absolute dog shit. Now when I do my skill work, it's real easy to use the legs because they're fresh. I want to use them. I don't want to use my shoulders. They fucking hurt. They're tired. So I would do a lot of stuff like pre-exhaustion as a way to get better technique. So when I'm starting off, you know, you have these certain strengths from years.
Well, in that case, it's a way to build your legs up for that lift, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
But for me, it was more of the skill portion.
Yes. But see, other people would look at it as I just need to build the quads up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a secondary movement. By pre-exhausting what you're saying, it's incorporating them specifically in how they're going to be used.
Yeah. As a skill.
Yeah, as a skill. Yeah.
Skill transfer.
Yes.
So that's the idea in powerlifting and bodybuilding.
Sure.
Is you pre-exhaust.
Yeah.
But from a skill acquisition point, you can use that same idea and say, hey, my legs always take over this movement. Well, go do 200 air squats first.
Yeah.
They're sure as hell not going to take them over now. Or for the jerk, go blow your shoulder, go do 100 push-ups. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden, that bar is glued to your torso. You're not gonna have that early press because you're gonna intuitively put everything you can out of the legs to get that bar up. Okay. Rather than that early press.
So as you're training this, that's the process that you're using.
Yeah, and that switched over to doing kind of high rep work and doing these timed EMOMs because instead of you know having to go up to a heavy ass max, you know, where you're generating a lot of systemic fatigue, the weight's fucking heavy, you might miss a rep just because of a small from rep to rep inconsistency in your technique. Nothing that's like a long-term problem. So I would use the pre-exhaustion principle for like specific body parts, and then I would use it generally. And so if I do something like an EMOM, which I know in the weightlifting world to do reps, you know, under fatigue is just blasphemy. You know? But I would say, well, look, this application here, what if instead of trying to take these really big max attempts, what if I tire myself out first? Now when I'm lifting, I have to have a higher degree of focus to make the lift. And so I can simulate a max, but at less weight. So if I'm tired, you know, I do 5 to 10 reps first. Now when I get to rep 10, I don't have all that strength to tap into where I'm going to be sloppy in my technique. This rep right here, when I approach the bar because I'm tired, this is a max attempt. this is everything I have to make this lift, but I don't have the heavy weight that I would otherwise need if I was really fresh. So I was doing those partially as a challenge, partially, yes, to get stronger, but also that was the next progression of skill evolution, was that for me doing them under fatigue, that was taking away all that strength reserve that I have and bring it down to now, okay, I have to be 100% focused. I got to be totally dialed in. I got to keep my technique as sharp as possible to make this 10th rep, because I didn't have years of going through max attempts.
Yeah.
So it was a way for me to simulate a max attempt without the need for really fucking heavy weight. And in CrossFit, there's a popular workout called Isabel. And so it's 30 snatches for time. When that workout first came out, years ago, 135 was a heavy weight. I mean, we're talking 15 plus years ago. That wasn't this like total sprint ass kicker that it is today. That was like, this is going to be a workout you slog through, like heavy rep after heavy rep after heavy rep. So I would do an EMOM, and I would often do them just to the point of technical failure. So I'll do an EMOM, and let's say I'm going to do 12 reps. Rep 12 was like, man, I fucking just nailed it. Like that 13th rep, you're doubting. Workout's over.
Yeah.
I'm cutting it there. Well, occasionally, if I was just in the zone, I would say, fuck it, we're going 30. Yeah. And I said, I'm not stopping here. I'm going 30 so I could say I did Isabel at this weight.
Yeah.
So that was always my time frame. And part of that time frame was the level system that we use at the gym. When that's one of the workouts they have to pass. And our rule is you got to do it within a class, because there's one mark where you just have to complete it. We don't give a time component yet. It just says complete. So I tell people, look, if you can do 1 rep a minute, we'll say you completed the workout. But we're not going to be here for 3 hours and you take a break in between. Set a limit of 1 minute. So I got to stick to our own rules and say, hey, if it's less than 1 a minute, we're going to call that Isabel if you get those 30 reps in. So now I would do EMOM work. Every once in a while, I'd be like, man, this is so fucking good. I'm not going to stop just because of some number. I'm going to go. These reps are the ones that are the most valuable. These reps that I'm tired, that I need full focus, that I got to be dialed in my technique. These are the ones that are making my skill better, not the ones that I'm totally fresh at 80%.
Well, assuming your technique doesn't go completely to hell.
Yeah, there's
what degree of variance are you going to allow there? Because you don't want to reinforce bad technique.
Like 1%.
All right. Okay.
It's pretty small.
All right.
And on a snatch, you don't have that much variance you can tolerate because you fail
You'll
it.
fall. Yeah.
The clean, you can get a little ugly.
No, you got a good point in the snatch. So you're going to drop it.
That's one that's like more than like a degree off. You fail the rep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do a few of them, and then there was one time I did it. The first really big one I did was at 300 pounds. And the context in which you do these matter. So the first one at 300 pounds, I did it when I had COVID. So I go to work out. I didn't know I had COVID at the time. I just got a killer headache. So I get to the gym. I'm like, man, my fucking head is killing me. I was like, yeah, I didn't sleep that well last night. I might be a little dehydrated. I was like, God, I feel like shit. So I go, you know what? We're going to work up. We're going to build up and wait. We'll see how the workout goes, get some movement in. And first rep feels like shit. Add weight, feels like shit. Keep going up. I'm like, man, I feel terrible, but they're moving pretty good. So I get all the way to 300. I go, you know what? We're going to do an EMOM at 300. We'll see how far we can go. First one feels like shit. Do another one. Do another one. Oh, we're just going to keep at it. Do another one. And then it get to the point where it's like, man, these are cooking. These are really going. Then I just kind of flip that switch. of like, all right, fuck it, we're going 30. We're going 30 so I can say, hey, I did it at 300 pounds. So end up making it at 30 reps. And it takes me like 29 minutes or so. So afterwards, I'm like, wow, that's, there's a little bit of a lesson there of, how you feel is sometimes a little bit of a lie. Like, this is one of the hardest workouts I've done for a really long time, and I feel terrible today. So it goes on. I think down the road, I think I do one at 315. I'm not sure. Well, then I do one at 330. And the 330 one went the same way. Like, I don't feel particularly great, but the bar's really, really moving well. And somewhere in there, I just said, fuck it, I think I can go 30. And I just finished them out till I hit 30. And up until that point, and that's kind of the very beginning of all of my social media following.
Yeah.
So what happened was I do these 30, and Dave Castro, who I don't know his official title with CrossFit now, but there's a couple people, when you think of the OGs of CrossFit, there's an argument to be made that he's number one. There's a few other people that you would put right next to him.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't even know that he didn't own CrossFit, is how he's known. And in the strength world, for anyone listening to this, he is the guy with the world record for the longest 405 deadlift of all time.
Ugly as fuck too.
But he's a Navy SEAL, and
can you still find that online, by the way?
Oh, I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
But he's a Navy SEAL. He's fucking extremely tough. And so even if it's ugly and it's gross and it's the worst deadlift you've ever seen,
it's 60 seconds.
There's an element of these guys that are just, they're fucking tough and they push their body harder than everyone else. So we have some popular duck hunting grounds next to us, but the season is always during Christmas and New Year's. So he's tried to come to our gym before to drop in, because he'll do like an affiliate, reach out and, post them on the gym, random places that he drops into. And he comes to the gym, and this is the first year that we're there because it's COVID. So normally we're like, hey man, we're closed. Like, we got a limited schedule during Christmas week. So he just catches us when we're at the gym. So we bullshit a little bit when we're there. And then he stumbles onto my Instagram, and he saw the 330 Isabel that I just put up, and was like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is going on? And he puts out one of his Dave Castro challenges and says, hey, if anyone can do this in 20 minutes, you get a free assault bike. And I don't think it's a weird workout. So most people can't comprehend like the level of that workout.
Yeah.
But someone like him that's been in CrossFit for a long time is like, what in the fuck just happened? Like, people in weightlifting or CrossFit will look at it and be like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
So he puts it out, and my following on Instagram like doubles from like 1,000 to 2,000. Now, I look at it, I'm like, ooh, 20 minutes. It got me because I was like, man, I know I can do 20 minutes.
But how are you going to do it?
Yeah, it was, I can go 20 minutes. I can get there. What he didn't know is that first one I put up, I did it on a Monday. So on Saturday, it was, I believe, the day after Christmas. So we had friends over, and our friends come over. We start drinking on Saturday. He comes over with a bottle of scotch. Our wives had 1 ounce each. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I had a sip of alcohol all of COVID. So this is like 9 months of no drinking. So we start drinking. So me and him crush this bottle of scotch together. Then we bring out another bottle of alcohol and crush a bottle of like the nastiest shit you've ever had. This peanut butter whiskey. And it's like, I'm not calling it whiskey. It's this thick, nasty ass shit.
Did it really matter at that time?
No. By that point, you're like, I don't give a fuck what it is. Like, but it was gross.
Yeah.
So I wake up on Sunday. You know, I wake up, it's like 8 a.m. Wake over, I'm feeling great. You know, I feel phenomenal. You know, bug my wife to wake her up. Then it quickly hit me. I'm like, oh man, it's because I'm still drunk. So at some point, I'm like, oh, I was like, man, I feel great. You know, all that drinking we did. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm definitely still drunk. Like my heart rate's high. I'm sweating. And I thought, well, you know, going back to like college days, hey, if I get up and move a little bit, I can just skip the whole hangover portion. I can just burn this off, skip the whole hangover part. So Sunday goes through, you know, I come on Monday and I do that 3:30 Isabel. And this is a weird thing. And I highly recommend that people don't drink any alcohol, but there's a really weird phenomenon that I've noticed over and over again, which is it has like an opposite effect on your nervous system of something like caffeine. Like a caffeine gets you all amped and then you crash. But over and over again, and this is my last overhead press PR, it like brings your nervous system down. And then when you turn it on and you try to lift,
it's like a super compensation
yeah,
effect.
it's happened like so many times that you're kind of sluggish during the day because you're operating at like 80%. And then when you want to turn it on, you're like, oh, fuck, I can get to like a higher level than I can normally get to. So I said, man, well, if I spent, you know, half the weekend fucking drunk, come in on Monday and do this workout, shit, I can go 20 minutes. He didn't know that that's how I did the workout. He thought this is like, oh man, he's been gearing up and really went for it. And I said, no, I was fucking drunk on Sunday morning. I do the workout Monday and it's the same thing. Like, nah, this doesn't, just whatever, you know, doesn't hurt, doesn't feel great, just no big deal. But like you when you need to get to that like next little level, you need to get your nervous system ramped up. You need to get your mind in the right space. I start moving and it's like, shit, I'm unstoppable at 3:30. Like they just keep going and keep going. So I go, whoa, you know, I can definitely go 20 minutes. I did 28, like 50.
Yeah.
And, you know, with those circumstances. So I go, I'm doing that 20 minutes. And it got to me because I was like, fuck, I'm going to have to do it because I know I can do it. I can't accept the challenge put out there.
No, I get that.
And not go for it.
Yeah. Well, especially when it gets in your head.
Yeah. So I had done a, we had a few people that joined in on this 1,000,000 meter challenge on a rower. And so I'd seen people do it the prior year, but all you have to do is you got to row 1,000,000 meters in a year. That's it. So most of my steady state cardio was just rowing. So starting January 1st, I would do, you know, a 5K almost every day. 5K rows can take me a little over 20 minutes, which is exactly how long the workout takes. If you can't row for 20 minutes, there's no way you're going to do that workout for 20 minutes. You're not going to do heavy snatches for 20 minutes. If you're getting winded at some like horribly slow pace on the rower. So for 7 months or so, I do a 5K every day, or I'll do a 10K and then do nothing the next day. And I'll throw in some longer pace stuff, but I'm trying to hit those 1,000,000 meters. So I'm going up and then I start assessing, you know, where is that failure point? Like, where is the failure point in those 30 reps? You know, first I got to build the work capacity of those 20 minutes. Now, is it a question of strength or is it a question of do you get tired? And I go, well, it's a little bit of both, but the strength portion is very specific. What is it that fails? And It's different when it's for reps versus when it's for weight. When it's for weight, I never fail securing the bar overhead. Always dead set. But when it gets for reps, the shoulders fail. I can pull the bar, but I cannot support the bar overhead. So it's the opposite. Usually when it's for max weight, the legs or back tires out first, but overhead, dead stable. Once you add a little bit of weight to it, or once you do start doing some reps, the legs and the back are continuing to perform, but the shoulders tire out. So I go, well, I need to get the shoulders to not tire out. That's my weak link here. Then I go, well, is it that I need to get the shoulders more conditioned, or I need to get them more efficient? Because those are two different things. If I improve the efficiency of it, that means I'm using less energy per rep. So the big key was I would notice on these higher reps, the shoulders would fail. But when I looked at it, it's not really the shoulders failing. The upper back is starting to get into a sloppier position. So at the top of when I go to catch the weight at the bottom, that upper back rounds a little bit. The shoulders then have to have a higher degree of turn in the shoulder. And now the shoulders are asked to do more work. So I don't have a shoulder problem. I got an upper back problem. The upper back fatigues, rounds, causes the shoulders to do more work. And then I fail the lift. So I go, well, I need two things. I need a little bit of extra upper back strength. I need a little bit better mobility of the upper back so that I'm in better position. I got a little bit better strength, and that shoulder problem is going to go away. I'm not going to keep failing those. So I needed two things: the conditioning, and then a little bit of better upper back mobility and strength. So over the course of, all of 2021, that's what I was doing. I was rowing. Then I was working very specifically on that portion right there. And then there's a little bit of practice in there. I got to be able to handle a rep every 40 seconds. And eventually got to a point, I attempted it one time, but I wasn't mentally 100%. I had the out, Then the time came. I had stopped the 1,000,000-meter challenge. So I had built up all this work capacity and all this conditioning. Now I had like 6 weeks afterwards. Then I went for that full attempt. And on that one, the fatigue clears a little bit from all of that rowing I was doing. The ramp up in those 6 weeks from now, I replaced that rowing with different volume of something else, something more specific to the snatch. Then I went to go take that workout and I made it. And then that workout was, not only is it the hardest one I've ever done, compared to anything else, 20 rep squats, whatever, it is so many levels beyond. Like if my hardest 20 rep squat workout, which I've done 425 for 20,
Mm-hmm.
if that's like a double, in baseball, that snatch workout is like smashing it out of the fucking park and watching it, fly into an apartment the next block over. Like there's no comparison. So I do that workout and something really weird happens. So during the whole thing, you have like a 20 rep squat. You always feel the pain. You become focused on the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Like this sucks, it hurts, and you embrace it and endure it. There was like a spiritual awakening during this workout. Like there was a point, because in the snatch, unlike the squat, it takes so much more skill that you have to focus at a far, far, far higher degree than you do for a 20 rep squat. So if you're off at all, you're going to fail the lift. So you become so dialed in of what you're trying to do that you completely block the pain out. So it hurt for a portion of the workout. It hurt way worse than, my hardest set of 20 rep squats. But then there was this like weird moment that it was like an out of body experience of you've gotten to such a level of fatigue, but yet you have to completely block that out and focus entirely on what you're doing. That when I was somewhere around like rep 19 or 20, it literally felt like I was playing a video game. It felt like you are detached from those sensations where you're like not even experiencing the pain anymore. It's like playing a PlayStation. Like you're just clicking X and you're getting set up and going to do it, and totally free of the sensation of like, your body telling you not to do it. Like you're completely block it out. So there was a point in there where it's almost like I'm watching the seconds tick down, and it's like in slow motion. Like I'm just, there's like, the only thing I can describe it is like when these crazy people describe to you like doing DMT and going to wherever and doing ayahuasca. It's like the exact same. The only thing I can equate to it, because it was like, dude, I'm not even like, I don't even feel like I'm in my body anymore. There's the level of focus that you need for that lift becomes, you have to completely block out the pain. You have to not think about all that stuff and be hyper focused just into what you're doing. And so I got to like rep 25, and I felt like in such command that I'm like, these fucking 5 are going down. They're there. No way I'm going to miss these lifts. And, nail the last 5. I finish it. It's like 1958.
Yeah.
And then every workout ever since that point has been like comparatively easy. Like once you've kind of gotten to that point, I go do another workout, and in my head, I'm like, man, I can go like 10 levels above, how amped I am right now. I got like 10 levels above that. This workout's fucking easy.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the hard ones are like, no. This is, this stuff here in the gym, this is not, the same thing. So I was happy that I did the challenge. I was like, oh, I did it. I get to brag about it and be like, oh yeah, I matched that one. But then afterwards I was like, man, what the fuck was that? Like what in the hell, just happened? Because I had known it from, doing like high rep squats. When you finish, kind of a series of high rep squats, you go do your regular training and you just feel tougher.
Mm-hmm.
Like you feel tougher. Like, oh yeah, fuck that. I can handle that. The rest of your training for the next like 3 months are like, oh no, this doesn't suck nearly as much as that. But then after that one, it was kind of like my ability to focus and get shit done in the gym was, 2-3 times what it used to be. Just from knowing like, hey, you can get to that point where you're not even feeling the pain anymore. Like you've completely overridden those body signals telling you, what not to do. So I look back on it and be like, man, I'm thankful that he put out the challenge. And I don't even know if he thought I could do it or not. It's probably like, oh, fuck it, 20 minutes. But that, just those 20 minutes, like every workout since then has almost been like a snooze fest.
Yeah, but there's another little part of this too, which is there's another part of your brain that's looking for the next thing.
It is. So you move, you never quite have that, like, you never have that like, okay, I'm satisfied with it.
Yeah.
There's always like, okay, what's the next, highlight that I'm going to chase. So there'll be a good one. I haven't thought of it yet. So
well, it takes a while to come off of the other one. That
one took me, I had to think about that one for like 8 full months,
mm-hmm.
Getting ready for it. So I've had some that have been tough since then. But you're always looking for, you're always thinking about the next one.
Yeah. Now you've noted that your sister died of obesity,
mm-hmm.
and that's why you started and wanted to be involved in CrossFit, helping other people. So what's the story behind that?
It is, well, there's nothing specific. That's the, kind of the remarkable part is how unremarkable it is. It's more of, I think, and I go back to Paul Carter years ago, put out this article that I think is the greatest article ever written on obesity. And this is part of why I went down to Portsmouth yesterday. He was the first guy that I had ever seen really articulate how obesity should be treated like addiction. And you'll notice that with a lot of former strength athletes that at one point were fat, like at one point were, pushing 300-400 plus pounds. A lot of them share that similar belief. But Paul laid out this article basically saying that we need to treat obesity like an addiction. It's not a food problem. It is a mental health problem. And you should treat it the same way that you would treat someone addicted. And he talks about the relapse rate of obesity. That obesity, if you were to see food as a drug, you would see that food has the worst relapse rate of any other drug. It's worse than cocaine. It's worse than anything else. And he goes, the difference is with food, you need a little bit to survive. So if someone needed to take a little bump in the morning, a little bump in the afternoon, and a little bump in the evening, that would be really fucking hard for them out of pure willpower to control their intake and not consume too much. So usually, we're not talking someone that's got like 20 pounds to lose. That's an issue of, okay, I cut out a little junk.
Yeah.
You get back on it. Usually when you're talking, you got 50, 100 plus more pounds to lose, you have food being used as a coping mechanism for something else. In the same way that drugs or any other activity is used for anxiety, to calm your nerves, for depression, for previous trauma or PTSD, any of those things, you will see food used in that same way. So it's not the food that has to be a problem, it's the person that has to be treated. Now, for her, it was that there was no warning the way that a lot of people have a long warning to it. A lot of times your health gets at a point and you think like, oh, well, I'm going to have this indicator that says like, oh, I'm going to have time to change. I'm going to have years to change. But not everyone gets those years to change. Sometimes, too many things pile up at one time and that's, you kick the bucket. A lot of times you'll see guys that they wait until they're 40 or they're 50 where, their blood pressure has been slowly coming up. Their cholesterol slowly been coming up. And at first it's a little bit of a scare. And it's like, it's not that big of a deal. And it gets worse. And you start setting these new expectations of, it's a little bit worse, but I'll get started Monday. And that doesn't happen for everyone. Sometimes all of those effects, kind of go unnoticed. And then that was, the tipping point of that was too much. And so I got involved in CrossFit because CrossFit to me was the only organization where they were willing to speak the truth on some of these things. So their big battle against Coca-Cola, their big battle of, hey, we need to get the junk food out of schools. We need to stop all the bullshit marketing and letting them tell all these things. You should view some of these places the way that you view big tobacco and giving very clear-cut advice that's not, all wishy-washy and being ruthlessly committed to the truth. They were willing to take a stand and speak up and say, hey, this is a problem. This is what happens. You can use this to improve your health and get better. And so for me, I had seen what it had done for other people. And up until that point, I didn't have the tools to kind of help other people, experience a different fate. It was, as much as I like strength sports, to me, it was, this isn't what that person needs. This person needs something a little bit different to make their life better. And so I had seen the way that it impacted other people. And going back to start reading the original information in the CrossFit Journal that Greg Glassman was putting out. So I started at the gym originally. Well, my wife started the gym. I came in. I stuck around a little bit longer because the gym owner was hot. And so I was like, oh, shit. I'll be around here for a bit.
Can't hurt.
Then I had this knowledge of how to lift and how to coach. But to be a coach, you have to get your level 1. So I signed up for the seminar. And it's completely 180 over everything that I had heard about CrossFit up until that point. Everything at that level 1 seminar was the opposite of what I had thought CrossFit was. When you go to the level seminar, like they tell you right then, hey, when you go back on Monday, you're not a coach. You know just enough to do the basics and be able to tell people, what CrossFit is and the foundation of it. But until you've gone and coached enough people and guided them to success, starting off with one person at a time because you don't have the skills to manage more than one at a time, and slowly building your skill set until you can handle more people at one time, you're not really a coach. Your education hasn't finished. You don't know shit yet. I thought, dude, that's a complete opposite message of what I've heard, since the first time I heard about CrossFit. So I go, okay, I believe in this 2-day seminar. I said, man, they presented a lot of high quality information. Then I go back and read all the journal articles, and they're what they say about, nutrition, community, all these different things. I'd seen the results from people in person and said, this is now the tool that I can use so I can help people get healthier and so they don't die of obesity. And so that was kind of the motivator of being in CrossFit, was because I had personal experience with it. And I wanted to help people get healthier. Up until that point, I just didn't have the tools, and then realized like, oh, these are the tools that are going to make a difference. From everything from how the gym is set up to the workouts that they do to the community aspect afterwards. I said, this is how you are going to get somebody to become healthier. And later on, I understood it more from that, addiction curing sense. So if someone, and the reason why I think, the strength athletes understand this the best is because they have a little bit different reason for the food that they're eating than the average person. They're eating because their sport requires them to be at that weight. So when their sport ends, it's a much easier transition to say, all right, I'm going to stop eating this shit because I don't need to be 300 plus pounds anymore. And a lot of them will come back and say, hey, that was really fucking hard. That was way harder than I thought it was going to be. That dopamine hit of crushing Snickers bars and gummy bears and all that shit, that was tough. And I didn't realize, because it was a long time in the making. I didn't realize how fucking hard that was going to be. And it's like, well, and that's you, that's a highly motivated individual. This is a guy that kicks ass at everything that he does. And he's coming out and saying, hey, this was fucking brutal. And probably the most vocal person I've seen on is Mark Bell. Mark Bell will be like, dude, I was 330 pounds and it was hard as fuck to give up that food. Now, you look at the guy and be like, okay, he's not lazy. He's not this, undisciplined piece of shit. This is a really motivated guy that's like, hey, this was really fucking hard. You guys need to treat this like an addiction, because I was 100% addicted to that food. And when you look at something like CrossFit, one of the aspects of addiction is changing the environment. To go back to the issue that Paul Carter had raised, if you had a little bit of cocaine, the first thing that we tell people is you got to get the junk food out of the house. No matter what you do, it's got to be out of the house within 15 minutes, because I got a Dollar General right next to me. I can have any assortment of junk that I want in the world. I leave the house, I'm back on my couch eating that in 15 minutes. So I'm not going to actually go without if I really wanted to. I just put a little barrier in there. And now to have that shit, I got to put in a little bit of work, and it stops me from doing it. But if it was in the house, I'd crush it within the next 3 minutes and it'd all be eaten. So when someone joins a CrossFit gym, one, yes, they start working out. But more importantly, they start hanging out with new people. You know, they have people around them that are willing to help them out. They spend time with those people outside of the gym where they're going to do activities that aren't just sitting around, drinking, eating, making food a central part of the activity. And at that point, oftentimes it's the first time anyone has ever had their weight impact them negatively. So when you look at the way that people, you know, the requirements of daily living, how hard is it really to get in the car and drive to work and perform your job? It's not that hard. So at no point are you ever like, man, my life is actually impacted outside of looks, which is, you know, not that big of a deal, until you go to the doctor's office. There is no reminder of like, hey, this impacts your life.
Mm-hmm.
On day 4 of our intros is when we cover the pull-up. Now, people will argue back and forth about, you know, whether they should do them strict, and they'll argue about keeping pull-ups and all this and that and safety. So on day 4, I have the exact same joke every single time. I demonstrate the pull-up. And as long as I think their shoulders aren't going to tear off the bar, I want them to get on that bar and hang, even if it's half a second. And I make the same joke every time. I demonstrate a pull-up, and I say, hey, this is what the pull-up looks like. And oftentimes they'll be like, oh, I can't do that. And I'm like, oh, well, you can't do it yet. Look, you know, we just got to get you stronger. I can do them. Now, their response, like 95% of the time, is predictable, because I tell them, hey, we got to get you stronger and you can do a pull-up. And they always come back by saying, well, yeah, or could lose weight. And the reason that's so important is because, one, it's their idea, not mine. So they say it, they recognize it, they say, hey, shit, my weight's having a negative impact on what I can go out and do. But once that happens, they now see it at everything. They see it all the time. You know, they get off of that bar, you know, workout's over, they go home. They're tired at the end of the day. And they're like, you know what? I'd probably be less tired if I weighed less. You know, I now see the impact that it's having in all these other places. You know, your feet hurt at the end of the day. Well, it probably hurt less if, you know, there was less weight on them all the time. So you, one, create the awareness, you know, right on day 4, we create that awareness. Hey, your weight is having a negative impact on your life. Then we provide the tools through working out and through nutrition of these are the things that you need to do. Along the way, they build new friendships, they build new people that they spend time with, that they're motivated by, that they want to be like. And they slowly go from this environment that is constantly promoting obesity, from both the way they eat, the way they move, they go to work, there's donuts at the table, they turn on the radio, there's an advertisement for food all the time. They hang out with all these people that aren't going to help them make that change. But now they start moving into an environment that supports their health. Because when they leave our gym, sure, that 1 hour, and we have a no food rule. You do not have food on the floor whatsoever. It stays in the office. They leave that environment, and now with those new people that they've met, that they've interacted with, they slowly move into spending more and more time with people who care about their health and who want to see them succeed. And that's a critical element of you know, any recovery program. You can't just go back to doing the same shit you've done all the time. So even if someone loses the weight, great. If you lose the weight and then go back to doing all the same shit, you're going to be back to that same weight. But this is a way for them to now have a new routine, a new environment, a new everything, where all of these factors work together to support their health. And so when we were there's a book, and I think it's the greatest book in the last however many years. It's called Dopamine Nation. And this is kind of all spelled out within that book. And she takes this fundamental view of saying that, any single substance or activity can be an addiction. And she breaks it down from a very basic level in the brain of dopamine and the parts of the brain that, process dopamine and are responsible for signaling pleasure and pain, to say that most people don't even understand that they're addicted because they're addicted to a little bit of all these different things in our modern environment. So somebody will have, it's easy to see when someone drinks too much caffeine, like, oh, well, I have a coffee in the morning. I have some tea at brunch time. I'm going to crush a Monster in the afternoon, and then I'm going to have a bang at the end of the night. If you were to say, like, well, yeah, I don't have a caffeine problem. I only have 1 cup of coffee. Everyone else would look at, yeah, dude, you look at all the shit you drink all day.
Yeah.
Like, look at how much caffeine you have. You're not drinking the coffee because you like coffee. You're drinking it because it's got caffeine in it. But if you go a notch all the way down to the most fundamental level, which is dopamine, you have this dopamine imbalance. And today you have a little bit of caffeine, but then you have a little bit of nicotine, and then you have a little bit of extra food. You have a little bit of scrolling on social media. You have a little bit of Netflix. You got all these little things that you have unlimited access to that is causing a disruption in that dopamine balance. And you may not see it because it's spread out among all these things. And when we look at an addict, they are getting all their dopamine from one thing, whatever that is. It could be alcohol. It could be pills. It could be something. And that's really easy to recognize. So when someone has a problem with one thing, you can pinpoint that and say, hey, this is a problem. But if they have that same level of problem spread out amongst, 5 little guilty pleasures, at a fundamental level, it's working exactly the same in the brain. So that's her whole central point of the book, is that when we look at treating things like obesity, you should take the lessons that you learned from addiction and treat it the same way. First, starting with recognizing this isn't a food problem. This is a person problem. What is it that we need to help them recover from? Is this eating the result of anxiety? Is this eating the result of depression? What is it that is causing them to do these things? Then have the tools, have everything ready to change those habits and build the environment around them so that everything around them supports their good health. And within CrossFit, you're seeing that happen. Like you're seeing people come into the gym that, lose 50 pounds and keep it off the rest of their life. When from a general public standpoint, the rate of success is rounds to 0. If you actually go through and add up all the people that have lost that much weight and kept it off the rest of their life, start being like, oh, well, I know this person lost a bunch of weight, but they were right back to it. Oh, I remember this guy did keto for a year and lost this much weight, and then they got right back to it. So the success rate for CrossFit is still low. We're not talking like it's 90% of people. It's still low. It might be 10%. Yeah, but 10% compared to 0% is way, way higher. I mean, you're comparing 10% to like 0.2%.
Yeah.
Obviously, this one has what's happening there is far more successful than the typical way of doing it, which is just looking at it from a food problem. When you take a food only approach, you're at that basically 0% success rate. But when you're taking it from a person approach, when you're taking it from an environment approach, the success rate's way higher. And I can think of multiple people now who have come to our gym, they've lost 50 pounds, and they kept it off forever. And one of those big changes is they hang out with other people from the gym. You know, before it was, you know, I get off of work, I don't do shit, I eat, I feel bad. Because I feel bad, I eat more. And it just becomes this vicious cycle. But now they're saying, hey, you know, I have something more to live for because I'm seeing how my weight impacts these other things. And I want more of those things. And they have everything that they need to succeed and do better. So, like most guys growing up, you know, I had this dream of like, oh, I'm going to have a gym like this, you know, like I'm going to have all my toys in one spot and have all this. But when I looked at it, I said, you know, that event kind of changed my life of like, hey, you know, ultimately I want to help people, you know, live a better life. And then for 5 or 6 years, I just didn't know how to do it, you know? And then once I was introduced to CrossFit, it was like, okay, this is a clear decision. Like this compared to everything else I've seen is what is going to allow me to change those people's lives. Whereas taking it from, you know, a more, you know, simplistic aspect of, yeah, I want this person to be stronger. I want them to enjoy powerlifting and strongman and these other strength sports. But at the end of the day, is their life really going to be better without all those things that go along with it? Maybe, but maybe not. You know, they might figure it out on their own, but those were the tools that I needed. And once I realized that, like, that was my full commitment.
You guys are selecting Merrick for your telehealth platform needs. They have a couple different ways that they go about doing this. The first is through a self-selected experience. There's a table talk panel, which is the full panel. That would be the panel that I personally get twice a year. That's checking everything. You name it, it's all there. The other panel is a checkup panel with a guided optimization. You're connected with a patient care coordinator, and the patient care coordinator will meet with you to determine what your needs are. Thing to be able to help optimize your health or mitigate without judgment. So the discount code again is Table Talk Merrick Health for all your hormone optimization and performance needs. Today's episode is brought to you by Element, a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything that you need and nothing that you don't. In other words, no sugar, no artificial coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, and no BS. With Element, I love the watermelon. The watermelon tastes freaking awesome. I drink 1 pack every day, no matter what. People that train out here, it's sitting out here for them all the time. The boxes don't last very long. Right now, Element is offering Table Talk listeners a free sample pack with any purchase. That's 8 single serving packages free with any Element order. Get yours at drinkelement.com/tabletalk. The deal is only available through the link in the description. The other thing is, if you don't like it, you can just give it away to a salty friend and Element will give you a 100% refund. No risk, money back guarantee. Head over to drinkelement.com/tabletalk. Today's episode is brought to you by First Detachment. Are you looking for a supplement brand that truly understands hardworking athletes? Look no further than First Detachment. 1D's real world experience is what I would consider, and they consider, battle tested. I have known Justin Harris for pretty close to 2 decades. And if there's anybody that I trust with nutritional and supplement needs, it's Justin Harris. If you guys have followed me and have followed the podcast, you pretty much already know how I feel about the supplement industry. For me to get behind any brand, I have to trust the brand and I have to trust the person both. And I'm pretty sure you guys all know why. When it comes to creating formulas and putting products on the market, and there's nobody that I trust more than Justin Harris. While I love all of their products, I'd suggest that you check out the Field Rations and WTH first. Go to www.firstdetachment.com and use the code TableTalk10 to save 10% off each order. The link is in the description. Where was the intersection between you being an investment advisor and then CrossFit and training, or was it always kind of integrated?
Oh, it wasn't integrated at all. I went to school for economics. So the way that I ended up in California was I had taken a break from school. And at that time, I said, you know what? I don't really know what I want to do with my life. I just know I don't want to be broke. So I had taken a break because I'd finished all my like general classes where you're like, okay, at this point, I really need to decide because you're now going to have to take major specific classes. I'm like, shit, I don't know. So I worked for a little bit as a mailman, put out my application everywhere. It gave me a call back. So at that time, they had a career freeze. So you couldn't actually get hired full time as an actual career. So you weren't getting all the benefits. You weren't getting the retirement and the insurance and all that. So they say, hey, we're working on a new contract. We're in arbitration right now. So I did it for a year. And you're basically working on a permanently temporary basis. The cool part was they just took all that money that they would have been putting into the pension and the insurance and just paid it out to you. It's like, oh, well, shit, that works even better for me right now.
Yeah.
So at the end of the year, I was going to go back and do another year. And my dad calls me up. And I wasn't working in construction because right before I went to college, public construction's a little offset from the general economy because you are setting those tax dollars aside ahead of time. So I graduated high school. It was 2009 and I wasn't 18 yet. I was still 17. So I couldn't work that summer. The next summer, which is 2010, that for public construction, that's like the worst part of their recession because those tax dollars from 08 and 09 haven't funneled into those projects. So I said, well, shit, my dad had told me, look, I have the pool. I can get you in if you really ask me to do it. But, I laid 2 guys off this week. I got a hard time, bringing you along a month later when I laid off 2 guys with families. So he's like, for you, because you're my son, I'll do it. But if you can do something else, you'd be better off doing something else. He's like, for your own, he said, don't worry about me, but for your own, he didn't use the word character, but for your own character of having to show up on a job site and you're the boss's son and you're there when we got to lay guys off with families.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I'll do it for you. Oh, fuck. Jesus. You're going to guilt trip me like that? So at this point, he gave me a call and said, hey, we're going to California. No one wants to go. So if you want to come down, I got a spot for you here. So I had thought at the time, because California is like 10 times the population of Oregon. I said, at some point, there's a good chance I'm going to end up there because there's more opportunity. It's 10 times the people. So I thought, well, this is going to move me one step closer. I still don't know what I want to do at this exact moment, but that'll get me a step closer. And it pays more. So, all right. Didn't renew, went down to California. And then the job finishes up. I decide to finish out my schooling between the classes I could take online and then ones that I could do in like a accelerated format on campus. And I graduate. And then we had kind of built the gym to a point where we had enough help that other people were coaching all the classes and we could get all that part covered. So I graduated, continued to be at the gym for a bit, then started working, and I'm going to use the term stockbroker because that's how everyone understands it, but took a job at Merrill Lynch working as a stockbroker. Now, there's a million terms for, financial advisor, investment advisor, blah, blah, blah. It's all the same thing. Technically a stockbroker doesn't exist anymore, but that's how everyone understands it. And I mean, I had read and studied a lot of economics. My degree was in economics, and I had understood a lot of things from like a more practical standpoint, because as part of the undergrad courses, they would let you take classes like payroll and income tax and other stuff like that as part of your electives. So like, well, you know, in the meantime, I always thought from the standpoint of like, you need some skills. Like, you got to be able to go do it. Like, I'm not going to go learn about this theory when I could take a payroll class and then get my foot in the door and be like, hey, I'll do the payroll that no one wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or, hey, I'll do, you know, I know these income tax basics. I can get a job working, you know, just filing people's returns or something. So I had already taken, you know, some classes like that, and obviously the other stuff in business, but I started working there, and it was kind of the same obsession like when I first started lifting, you know, like once I started doing that, it's the same, like, all right, I got to learn everything, you know, there is no like halfway in kind of deal. It was all in. And then as I read this stuff, or as I study some of these concepts, the dots are connecting automatically. Like, oh yeah, I already know a lot of this stuff because it's exactly like this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's the same principle as this. It's the same as this. Or there's things where they'll use specific terms, you know, like delayed gratification, you know, that'll be pop up all the time. Well, yeah, I've been hearing that shit for 10 plus years. Every lifter that's ever existed will say the same thing. Like, hey, worry about the long term, worry about this. Don't think about today, think about the progress. So it was for some of that stuff was like second nature.
Yeah.
Like you had seen an application of it. So when you learn the theory or you learn the idea, it's like, oh, that totally makes sense. Some of it was new, you know, more of the you know, investing specifics. So while working there, I kind of started putting a lot of this together of that intersection of understanding how finances and fitness, you know, the same people that are jacked are the same people that are rich. Like, it's all the same. When you get to the basics, it's all the same qualities of that person. Like the same qualities of delayed gratification that allow someone to save money and invest it is exactly the same way they prioritize, you know, their mobility and their conditioning and all these things. All those old guys you see that are still jacked and strong, those personal qualities are why these people are rich. And you'll often see a big overlap of the two. I'm like, hey, why does this person have it all? Well, because it's the same thing that allows them to succeed at that. And I haven't really taken the time to put more out there of how, you know, content related of all this stuff, because when I was working there, you know, we're going through the training program and we're sitting in the bullpen, and it's obviously a sales job. And it's not just that, but anyone that has a gym owner, you know, a realtor, everyone who sells in some sense, which is more jobs than most people realize, your sales starts off with attention. Like, that's at the very top of your funnel, attention. So we're talking about social media, and I go, well, I need something that catches people's eye right away. Like, all these people know me as a gym guy, and so I need a way without being like obnoxiously pitching them or selling them right off the bat, for them to capture their attention and kind of make that adjustment in their head. Like, oh, this isn't a gym guy anymore. Like, he's moved on. He does something else. So I had a list of names. I'm like, all right, the first thing you got to do is you got to switch your name that you go off of, on social media.
Yeah.
And there's in CrossFit, there's this common like two-term deal that people do where they use like whatever it is. I know the probably one of the catchiest ones is deadlifts and donuts.
Yeah.
So like right off the bat. So I go, all right, I need two things. So I had the idea. The first one that came to my head was Wall Street Weightlifter. It's like the first one. I go, oh shit, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Then we start making a list of other ones. And I pitch it to the people that were going through the training program with me. Like, nah, go off the first one. So that was the very beginning of it, was that I only switched it because it was a sales tactic. And then we're talking about using social media. And at that time, there was more advisors over 70 than under 30. So when I'm looking at it, I'm like, look, I'm going to be honest about, my position here. On these ways that you're allowing us to market ourselves, I can't compete. I'm like, these guys are still taking new clients. So every single guy in this office, we're all competing against each other. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. Now, let's look at the ways we're going to compete. Let's look at what they're better than me at. Let's look at what I'm better at. Now, these guys got the experience. All right. They got that on me. These guys have their credentials. They're more educated. They're more credentialed. They got the experience. And they got the money. So these archaic ways of marketing where you're schmoozing with everyone and you're hosting these events and you're doing all this stuff, that's great for them, because for this guy to spend $2,000 on an event, that's chump change to him. He doesn't give a shit. He'll go buy the big table here and invite buddies out to it. That's great for them. That's wonderful. I'm not at that point. I don't got this kind of guy's bankroll. I'm not going to, at the end of the day, you guys own the client. Technically, you guys own the client book. So I'm not coming out of my own pocket and putting all this money in. And then if I leave, you're going to fight the shit out of me on it. Because when you're in the training program, you're not allowed to take those clients. Once you're out, you've been doing it for a long time, then you can leave. But if you're one of the very, very small minority that succeed early on, if you try to leave and you haven't finished that training program, it's going to be a nightmare. So I go, well, for the next 4 years, you guys own my client book. So I'm not going to be spending 10, 20, 30 grand to establish myself out at these events and schmoozing with these people. I said, so they got every advantage possible on me. I go, well, to be fair, let's look at what I can do that they can't. These guys don't understand blue collar money. They don't. You put me and him in a room, I'm going to crush this guy. They don't have the experience, out working with their hands. I said they never had a true, honest, hard day of work. And so they don't understand these guys' mentality. They can't come in here and hold a conversation with some guy that built all his money in construction or built it with this trucking company. And there's a lot of that money in those areas. That the real estate boom of California. I said, so you put us in a room, who do you think this guy's going to trust more? Me, because I understand this guy, or them, who looks at this guy and is like, he just has a weird feeling about him. They come from two different worlds. So, and maybe that doesn't matter. He's going to do business with the other guy just because he's been doing it longer. He's more established. He's more everything. But that's my only chance of success, is you guys let me communicate with them. If I can't go out there and share a different perspective and share that, I got no chance. So I tried using social media, and they just fought the shit out of me on it. I mean, there's the laws and there's the regulations that you have to follow. But the compliance department takes like those laws and rules, and the company takes that up a notch, where they're like, okay, if that's what you can legally get away with, let's take it up a notch to build a safety cushion. But then the compliance department that you're working with in your local office is like, okay, let's take that up a notch, because we don't want, the big dogs breathing down our neck. So like, well, shit, now you can't do anything. I'm like, you effectively cannot be on social media whatsoever. So I said, how the hell is a guy in his 20s gonna get out there and compete against them if I can't use social media? And this is right before social media like really blew up.
Mm-hmm.
So I go, well, dude, I'm fucked. So I did my best. I put in my time until I satisfied the requirements to be a certified financial planner. And I was like, oh, okay, now I at least got something that I can demonstrate some level of proficiency. And what has slightly occurred is, today you don't have the infrastructure that you needed decades ago to execute a trade. We got the internet now.
Mm-hmm.
So the capital requirements are far less. And so I looked at it and was like, well, if I gotta spend all this money, and that's really the only way you're going to succeed. If I got to spend this money to build this book of business, it's not going to be you guys who own the book at the end of the day. It's going to be for myself. So I ended up leaving and going independent. And at that point, it's like, okay, now I just got to follow the law. I don't have to follow this made up shit of we call anything, marketing, or we call anything advertising. And, was going through the process, and that was August of 2019. And so I had started putting, some of those ideas that I had of like different articles and different videos and different stuff, started coming up with a bit of a plan of like, all right, my marketing tactic is going to be leveraging the people I know in fitness and leveraging finance and getting people interested, because people in fitness, they want to make money, and people who have money want to be in shape. There's a lot of overlap. And so if you have one or the either, this is going to help you with both of those. So if you have one of those skill sets, you're going to understand how to use fitness. And if you have this fitness mindset and you understand it from a fitness perspective, you're going to learn exactly what you need to do to grow your wealth. So I started off by saying, okay, attention is step one. Right now, I have a really small audience, so I can put in all this work to build the content, and no one's going to look at it. Well, a big whopping 5 people might look at it.
Yeah.
So I go, you know what? I should first try to build the audience a little bit through fitness. And then COVID hit. Now, COVID hit. And kind of I didn't have the built up book that was going to eat up all my time. When you're early on in your career, it's all marketing. Everything you're doing is getting in front of people, building a sales pipeline, working on your skills so you can do the job better. And so it was, oh shit, we own a gym in California during COVID. And now we have to have all this time and all this other shit we got to do. So my priorities changed a little bit. The first priority was, hey, when this is over, we want to make sure we still have a gym.
Yeah.
So I got pulled into doing more of that gym stuff. But long term, it really wasn't a big deal. And so, well, long term, what I'm doing anyways is building this audience through fitness to begin with. So it's really not a setback to spend more time at the gym, because you got to grow the audience first. And I'm going to get to a higher point growing it through fitness than trying to do both or only through finance. I said, that's really the way to capture attention. And when COVID first started, I'd gotten a little complacent. I'd gotten a little soft physically and mentally. Physically, I was putting up decent numbers, but you're just not training at the same kind of intensity. You're training like, I want to be strong for life, and, all those cutesy things that people talk about, and balance and all that. And it wasn't really who I am. And so I always struggled with that idea of like, balance or whatever. So COVID hit, and man, I trained fucking hard. It was like COVID hit and all the shit that we had to deal with in California. COVID hit and it was back like I was 14 again. Like I trained so fucking hard in those first few months. And it was, going back to that idea of like, you evaluate your workout And then you ask like, hey, is it because I'm being a pussy or is it because I'm under recovering? Well, it was never, the answer to that question was never recovery. It was like, oh no, there's more I got. Oh no, I got a little extra.
Mm-hmm.
So for months, every single workout was like, no, I'm hitting this fucking weight. You know, every single time. Like there was so much built up rage starting that workout that I was like, no, that's not gonna be a problem today. You know, I'm gonna get myself to that level to hit these workouts. So pretty quickly afterwards, I get back to like all-time shape. You know, back as good as I've ever been. And part of that was, you know, the workouts. Part of it was, you know, kind of a whole reevaluation of values of, hey man, all the people talking to me about this balance shit wants me to permanently close and lock me up. That doesn't make any sense. So I kind of changed my perspective on balance to be what I really believed in first, which was you should always work as hard as you possibly can. It's just that you should allocate those things appropriately. You know, not balance in the sense of like, oh, I give too much at work. That's only an issue if it causes you to not give as much at home or not give as much somewhere else. So at that time, it was like, I go to the gym all in. You know, I go home, we're 100% here with the kids, no distractions, no bullshit. Every single part of the day was kind of compartmentalized of like, I'm all in at each aspect. So I get back to, you know, all-time shape, and our time is still kind of eaten up with the gym too much, where I'm like, man, I really got to start doing this shit. But, you know, we're too worn out at the end of the day. So things finally kind of calmed down. And that's where this whole, you know, Castro challenge came in, which was the end of 2020. And so my following like doubles. That's 1,000 to 2,000. But then I go, well, yeah, you know what? I probably should start posting more. I just doubled, you know, I got a whole 1,000 new people, and a lot of them I had maybe met before, a lot of people from California, a lot of people that I'm loosely affiliated with. And so then I was like, okay, I got to post more than, you know, the once a month PR. So I'd post a little bit, and then a bunch of new people would follow, and then a bunch more, and then a bunch more. Let's go. Maybe I should post twice a week. Like, we should probably bump this up a little bit. And then it's kind of organically grown from there. And my intention always was, I'm gonna do, you know, the finance aspect of it. But then the fitness part of it took off so quick and like so consistently that I was like, oh, I'm like, don't even have the ability to put that out there, because the fitness part has taken up all my time. So that transitional will probably happen here shortly, because now we finally have the coaches that can handle coaching a lot of the classes. So like recently in the last 2 months, we brought on one guy. He's a total stud. He teaches all the shitty classes that are hard to teach. So now it's been like, oh, well, now I can do a little bit more media. Now I can go do this thing. Now we can go be at this event. So that process was much longer than I initially expected. So I got like a couple, you know, I write everything down on a legal pad. So I got like 2 pages of shit that's like, hey, I need to cover this topic. I got like 100 items that have been like, oh, I need to cover, you know, this concept of these 2 things. But I've been dragging my feet on it.
The interesting thing that you said earlier, and it's kind of one of the reasons why I started the company years ago, is if you look in the strength sport world, you have these people that they know how to, they have all the things that are required to be successful in this other space. If it's financial space, business space, or whatever it is, but they don't realize it, you know, but it's there. And then on the same end, you know, as I've come through over the last 30 years, I know people in this space, you know, the business space, that they have all the skills and all the attributes that are required to be successful, to be healthier, but they don't. And it's kind of frustrating because they don't think they do. Like they don't see the correlation, the delayed gratification that you were talking about. Excuses, not making excuses. Like the people in training that will never make excuses have all the excuses in the world why they can't fucking save money, right? And just back and forth, where there is some crossover, but it's not as much as you'd think, because in the business world, they can get by with being out of shape for a while. The longevity becomes the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's kind of like compound interest, right? You can take somebody with a trade because right now that's the debate that goes around. You go to trades compared to college, who's going to make the most. And yes, I know how it works out over a period of time, but they make a lot of assumptions. Now, if you take the trade person that actually can keep the job and not jump from job to job to job and max out their 401k at 19, and the other person can't even start contributing until 30, the back end of that is fucking big.
Yeah, my brother became a journeyman plumber. So he was licensed at 23. And in Oregon, you can look up prevailing wage rates. In Oregon, they're killing it. So my dad got him in, right when he was 18. He decided not to go to college. And he got in. He was licensed by 23, and fast forward, this would be 18 or 19 years. He's made good money his whole life. He was getting paid, when he was going to school. So he's working 40 hours a week as a laborer, then going to school at night. Then he's making good money. He's able to pay for his wife to buy the daycare that she was working at, pays off his house, sends his kids to college. And along all this way, he built these skills to now work in the main office. So he learned a few other things like estimating and other skills. So he's at the main office and everyone there is younger than him, He said they're typically between like 27 to maybe 35. They got a whole bunch of engineers and other people of similar roles. So no one had told them at any point what the top tradesmen were earning. They were totally clueless about it. So they find out how much money he makes. And now, at one point, 2 years ago or so, he became the company's highest paid tradesman. And the only reason he doesn't have an official, salaried management position is they said, look, we can't get away with paying you that much as a manager. So we can pay you as a tradesman and add these perks and still make it per hour. So it looks like you're a tradesman, even though your job responsibilities are different because, our rules with payroll and the company and all this other stuff, we couldn't justify that if you were, officially a manager. So they find out how much money he's making, which shouldn't have been a surprise because these prevailing wages are public info. They're posted on the freaking state's website. So they look at it and they go, holy shit, you can make twice as much as I make? I went to fucking school for 5 years to do this and you're making twice as much money as me? And he jokes. He's like, yeah, I guess what the company's saying is that, 2 engineers is worth what 1 good plumber is.
Well, on the negative side of that though is when they're that young and they're not financially literate, they're just blowing all their cash.
Yeah, they're gonna buy the biggest truck that they can, and they're gonna roll in style to the job site, which most superintendents love. Because now you got a guy that's going to accept all the OT and he's gonna do shit because he needs this job. So when you got a guy rolling in there and he's blowing all his money, you got leverage on him. Hey man, I know you need this job because I'm watching you blow all this money. The guy that's showing up in some old piece of shit Ford Ranger, like, ooh, I gotta, tone it down a hair.
Yeah, because he can get a job like that.
And especially if he's really skilled. Some of those guys with specific skills, those are always in demand. So up in Oregon, if you're a plumber, those skills are always in demand for different stuff. So even things you wouldn't think of. So now that Oregon is, drinking more beer than water, and they got microbreweries on every corner, well, who do you think is installing all of those systems that keep everything clean? They're always looking for guys that understand how to do that work, and there's very few that can do it. So any of those guys that pick up specific skills and they, manage their money, me and him have joked that before you have fuck you money, you got to have fuck you skills. And if you have those skills, you don't need the money. Like if you have those skills that people need and there's not enough supply of it, you are going to go work wherever you want to work at. If they lay you off on Friday, you're going to be somewhere else on Monday. So you don't necessarily, before you get to that point where you have enough money that, okay, I can just live off of the return of this money that I have. Before that point, and a much easier point for most people to get to, at least younger in their lives, is getting to that skill point. And then once you're at the skill point, people have to treat you the same way. Hey, if I'm out of here on Friday, I'm over there on Monday, I'm not going to put up with some of this shit. But if your skills, aren't in that big of a demand, there's plenty of supply of it, you're going to tolerate a lot of bullshit. You don't have any leverage in that point. So people have this dream that they're like, oh, I'm going to have all this money saved up where, oh, I'm just going to live off of that. I do whatever I want. Well, a lot of tradesmen live that same life beginning at age 25 where, hey, I'll have a job tomorrow. What are you talking about? Like, you're not going to treat me like that. And so for a lot of people that they're thinking of it from either a security standpoint or they're thinking of it from an independent standpoint. I want to be able to do whatever I want. The skills portion is easier to get to than the money portion. The money portion is going to take you a bit of time, but the skills can happen a lot quicker. Where I have a highly compensated skill, everyone needs it, no one can do it.
Assuming now going back to the training part, if they understand the hard work associated with building on their skill set, yes. But if they're lazy, like a lot of people will be in the gym, they're just lazy. They just rely on the basic skills that they learned, and that's all they ever have. Then no. Then they become that person that are like, no, go away. We'll get somebody else.
Yeah. And I broke it. And this has been a weird thing that I've gone back and forth with people because they're still seeing trade school as if you can't go to college. So there's still like this weird condescending way that people bring it up of like, well, trade school is fine. Like, if you can't get into college, you don't have the chops to cut it in school. And it's like, no. It's not just fine. It is by probability the better option. Like you're only thinking of the person that's in the top 5%. You're not thinking of the average person who graduates versus the average tradesman. You're not comparing, the top tradesman to the average college graduate. You're just looking at the very top people from college and using that to paint a picture of the whole group. And you're often using the worst tradesman and painting that as a comparison of the whole group. When, if they're a really shitty welder, it's not that great of a job. But if they're the best, you make a pretty good living on it. And they don't see that aspect. They just see, hey, it's okay if you're going to go to trade school instead of college. But that can be option A, and it's a really good option A. And I've met people where if you break down the amount of hours you actually spend studying, really break it down to how much time did I spend doing self-study? How much time was I in lecture and doing assignments? It's not that much. It's not nearly as much as you think. So a lot of people go to college, they get their degree, and then they think it's over. Like, oh, I've learned everything there is to learn. See ya. They go get a job. If they're lucky, they get a job in the field that they studied. It'll be, some boring version of what they studied. They'll maybe move, once they get a little bit of experience, they'll move up 1 or 2 notches. Then they get stuck there. They get married, they have some kids, they buy a house, they look up, they're 60 years old, and like, where the fuck did 30 years of my life go? If you were to break down the time that you spend studying in college and say, okay, maybe I don't do it in 4 years. Maybe I do it over the course of 12 years. If you were to spend 1 hour a day, you graduate, you're 18 years old. If you spent 1 hour a day studying, when you get to 30 years old, you have the equivalent, effort of a college degree. You have put in enough time to say that this person has put in the equivalent of a college degree in terms of just self-study. That's 1 hour a day, just like your workout. 1 hour each day. But it's not just going to be equivalent, it's going to be far better. One, you're only studying for an hour, so your intensity is way higher. If I only got to do an hour, that's going to be a way more productive hour than trying to cram it all in one little window. So the intensity is way higher. And along the way, you're going to be, since you're doing it in little pieces, you're going to be working, you are going to be accumulating experience. The material that you're learning is going to feel more applicable than someone who has never worked before, someone who has never, done shit in the field that you're studying. They're going to learn a bunch of stuff, forget most of it, go on, and then actually start getting some experience. But if you're doing an hour a day, you learn, and you're learning at a more intense, plus you're getting the work experience at the same time so you can connect the dots between the two. And then because it's spread out over a longer period of time, that information is more fresh, that is newer and superior information. So you take 2 people at 18, this person went to college, then they're 30. They didn't learn shit for the last 8 years. This person didn't go to college. They work full time. They spent 1 hour a day studying. By the time they're 30, both people have spent the same number of hours on their education, but the person that didn't go to college, those hours were more efficient. They have the work experience to understand and learn the material better, and all that information is newer. Whereas this person that thought, oh, at 22, I know everything. I'm going to quit. This is the last book I'm ever going to pick up. At age 30, the person that didn't go to college has a huge, huge leg up. They don't have a piece of paper saying, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. But they got 12 years that they've been working. And at some point, those things don't matter anymore. You have history on this person to see what their accomplishments are and what they can do.
And it also assumes that person that had those 4 years weren't just memorizing for a test.
Which is most.
Which is most.
Which is most. And if, you're really looking at it today versus, 50 years ago, you got people, and I'm okay being a jerk on this one. From Thursday to Sunday, they're drunk for 4 days in a row, and they study for like 3 days, and think that they're going to get ahead. Like, you're not getting ahead. That's not going to happen. Like, you're not even close to putting in the amount of work that this person is working full time. So you're not going to get ahead. You know just enough, but once you're out of here, you're not going to move up. And compare that to the person that was more like on a self-study aspect. This person is going to continue doing that, and they've built skills and they've built resiliency, and they are going to be in a far better position at age 30. Now, often what happens is that person that was more like from a self-study standpoint, they don't have the confidence. They don't have a lot of attributes because they didn't go to college. But that's not because it isn't within them. It's because all these people on the outside have told them that. all these people on the outside have been like, oh, well, they must not be very smart. Oh, they must not be very this. Oh, they must not this. But when you take it from a purely practical standpoint, that is the way better option. That, hey, spread that out over time, be consistent, get a little better, build your skills, get some experience, compared to just, hey, go to school for 4 years, get drunk half the time, memorize for a test, and then you know everything.
Well, I'm thinking back to the training we were talking about earlier too. There's more adversity to be overcome on one route than the other. And the more times you overcome adversity, just a little bit, it stacks up, over a period of time. Some people, you could say some people that are in that structured college environment are in a bubble.
Oh, it's worse than a bubble. So what was weird for me is my generation was the people right at the brink before colleges went crazy. I graduated high school in 2009. And then somewhere along that line of 2012, 13, 14 is right at whatever the hell culturally happened among colleges in those years. We saw it at that point. And something just went ballistic where it's everything is all safety. You can't say anything. You can't challenge anyone's beliefs. You can't do any of that. And we saw it at the time because when we came in as freshmen, none of that existed. And then as seniors or people doing 5-year programs, they're like, what meeting is this? When do we start doing this? And they're like, this is weird. Something's going on here. And then now they've just gone totally crazy where it's this idea, and some of it's well-intentioned. You don't want your kids to struggle. You don't want your kids to go through hardship, but it's a critical element of their development. They can't not do that. They have to have some level of adversity or they lose the ability to overcome it. If they've never been challenged, they don't have those skills of overcoming challenges. They don't have it. They're completely clueless about what it's like. If you fail at something, they don't know what it's like to take accountability for it. They don't know how to assess the situation and figure out, what do I need to improve? What do I need to do differently? They just sit back and be like, oh, well, this person's going to solve it for me. Well, sorry, your mom's not always going to be there.
Yeah.
They're going to be gone at some point and you're going to figure the shit out for yourself.
Now, in your county you're in, I don't know if I would say the front line, but you're in the forefront of trying to get the relief money that you're supposed to get for the gym. Mm-hmm. Right. So how is that progressing or not progressing?
Oh, no, that's not progressing at all. So what had happened is the city got $10 million of COVID money. Now, with that COVID money, they got certain requirements. So the whole purpose of the bill federally was to support public health and to mitigate the damage of the shutdown. Now, the city decided to give 1 million of that to businesses and to keep 9 million for themselves. Okay, hold on. Telling me that you guys had 90% of the impact from COVID, the city government? So we haven't even gone into that part of it where it's hey, you guys are totally full of shit. You guys think you guys deserve 90% of it? So of that million,
they didn't shut down.
The government? Oh, they shut down.
Okay.
But they collected more tax revenue in 21 than they did in 2020. So they shut down. City Hall was closed. You couldn't do shit. No one's going to answer your call. But they still collected all the tax money. So they didn't lose a dollar. They didn't lose a single dollar. They collected all their taxes. They just quit showing up to work for 3+ months. So they give $1 million to businesses, and they have the dumbest idea of all time. They do what they call a RAD card. This RAD card is an app. Now, if you put money on this card that's on your phone, they're going to match funds. So I put $100 on it. They're going to match it $100. And now I have $200 to spend at a local business. So right off the bat with this rad card, I go, hold on. You got $1 million. Let's think this through. You're only going to match $100. Let's do some math here. 1 million divided by 100. That means you need 10,000 people to download this stupid thing and use it. Now, how many adults do we have in town? 20,000? You guys think that 50% of the adult population is going to download this app and use it? That's the only way to exhaust all those funds. Now, if you talk to anyone that does business around here, and it doesn't even have to be here, anyone who does business that uses an app of any kind, thinking that 50% of people are going to download it and use it is crazy. Not happening. So it failed as expected. So California, this particular city, they could not give away free money. And I don't think that part is appreciated as much as it should be. They had $1 million to give out for free, no strings required. And they could not give out the money. That is what, the California government is like. So I haven't even busted their balls on that, but I said, hey, when you put it like that, wow, it sounds like you guys don't know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You guys can't give away free money. So it fails, and they decide to change from that rad card program to just give the businesses money directly. So they say, hey, we have such and such funds left over. Instead of doing this rad card, we're going to hand out grants to businesses. And they put out a list of requirements of what you have to satisfy. And I look at it and I go, well, that's bullshit. You open up the requirements and I go, there's no way you can satisfy this. No one qualifies. The first one that was proposed was you had to be shut down totally for 6 months. And I go, you guys know that none of us were shut down for 6 months. We were fully shut down for 3 months, and then we had various levels of bullshit in here between doing workouts in the parking lot, between having to do this, between having to do that. So you guys know that no one falls into that tier. Then it was you had to have a 50% loss of revenue. And you have to be in business today. So I go, if you had a 50% loss of revenue, you're not around today. How can you possibly put that as a requirement? Do you guys not understand like these basic things? If they lost 50% of revenue, they're gone. They were long gone. They shut down the first month and saw you later. That was the initial proposal. They changed it to 25%, but even 25%. So you guys got to understand that you're paying more money in expenses for COVID-related stuff. So you lost 25% revenue, but your expenses went up. Now, the average small business only has a profit margin of like 10%. So if this person lost 25% revenue this year, that means they had multiple years of not making money. That means they lost like 3 years of profit. Anyone who is looking at their business and is like, oh shit, I'm going to work the next 3 years making $0, they packed up and left. So you look at the requirements and you're like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. No one qualifies. And when no one qualifies, no one applies. Well, the finance director has ultimate discretion over who they're going to give the money to. So I go, I look at it and tell right away, oh, so people look at this, they say, hey, I don't qualify. I'm not going to apply. Now they give the money out to whoever the hell they feel like giving out, and their excuse is, well, no one applied. You had to give the money to someone. So we didn't qualify. We're the most shut down business in town. We don't qualify. And I go, well, if you guys are giving the money to anyone, you're giving it to the gyms. Don't give me this shit because we were the most shut down. We were the least able to accommodate. You guys are handing that money out to the gyms. So I apply. And I knew we didn't qualify, so we knew it was going to be a pain in the ass. So They tell me, hey, it's going to take 10 to 14 days to process. All right, that's fine. So I send an email at day 14. No response. I show up in person at day 21. They give me the runaround and all these excuses and blah, 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 blah. Show up at day 28. Saying, oh, it's the next one. It's right on top of the stack, on and on and on and on and on. And there's some other stuff in here that is far worse and far more illegal that I haven't brought up publicly yet. So I'm not gonna go into those little details. But they eventually get back to us. They give us a decision after 43 days. Now, that decision was 2 days after the applications ended. I go, hey, it's supposed to take 10 to 14 days. What the hell happened? It took you 43 days. So I look at it, and it's not for the full amount. It's for 60% of the maximum. Now, in the meantime, I've been looking at the check register of the city, because that's public. They have to post it on the city council's website. So I already know who's got the full amount. One of them is the city councilman. So the very first check that they cut out of the program, very first one, to a city councilman. He owns a barbecue joint. In March of 2020, he didn't even have a physical location for his business. So in March of 2020, this councilman was operating a pull-behind barbecue trailer, parking it next to the hospital, soaking in all the money from the contracted travel nurses and doctors that were just contracted in, so they don't have an apartment and they don't have places to go for food. Makes a killing during COVID. In June, there was a restaurant that closed. He swoops in on the location, obviously with a great deal, because who the hell's who's gonna fill in that spot during June of 2020? Then we fast forward to 2023. They write him the maximum grant amount. He takes that for an entirely new location downtown. So I already know this. So then you guys are bullshitting me. Well, they send us the response of, hey, we're going to give you 60% of the maximum. I look at it, I say, man, fuck you guys. So give me zero then. It's all right. I'm going to wait. I'm going to make sure that you guys write that check and it clears and I have the money first. Then it's on. So once I get the check, well, I emailed like 2 weeks later, hey, you got that check yet? It's been 2 goddamn weeks. So after 3 weeks, we pick it up, make sure it's deposited. I said, okay, now we're going to play the game. So I email, say, hey, can you provide me some clarification? I'm not understanding, why we didn't qualify for the full amount, because we were the most shut down business. So they email me back and they say, oh, it was based on revenue loss. Now, nonprofits have public tax returns. So I download a copy of one of the nonprofits they gave money to, and I email it to them. And I go, well, are there any other criteria? Because, this organization had no loss of revenue. They had the exact same revenue year to year. So I'm not comprehending how they got more money than we did. So they email me back and say, well, it's because they're in a qualified census tract. Now, a qualified census tract, if you think like a zip code, a census tract, we do the census every 10 years. A census tract is most easily understood as a smaller zip code, So your zip code, they might break down to like 10 different little tracts. Mm-hmm. So you have a better understanding of those demographics in that area. Now, they say, hey, well, they're in a qualified census tract, which is it's essentially a fancy name for a low-income neighborhood. It's the politically correct term for it. So I email her back a picture of the qualified census tract highlighted with the boundaries and the area that it encompasses. And I say, well, we're in a qualified census tract too. In fact, we're in the exact same one as that organization, which is your rationale for why they got more money than us. So then they email me back a third time and say, well, technically you're correct. But on their application, they listed these kinds of expenses, which fall under the category of disproportionately impacted. And on your application, you listed these expenses, which only falls under the category of economically impacted. And those expenses have higher priority over these ones. So now I go, oh, look, that was completely full of shit. Now you're reaching so far that this is, I don't know who you gotta talk to someone else on this, because that was so stupid what you just put. You gotta talk to someone and run it by them first before you bullshit me. I said, first of all, the category of economically impacted and disproportionately impacted has nothing to do with the kind of expenses. The business classifies as either economically impacted or disproportionately impacted. And one of the qualifications for being considered disproportionately impacted is being in that qualified census tract. Now, if you're in that census tract, the Treasury is saying these people have been historically disadvantaged, so we want to make it as easy as possible to help them out to invest in the future. So them and us are both categorized as disproportionately impacted. So what you just said is completely bullshit. And I filled my application exactly the way that you gave me in an example. You said when you asked for extra information, which you didn't have to do because I had given you everything on the initial application, you said example and then told me how to fill it out. And that's how I filled it out. So you instructed me to fill it out this way. Even though you knew all these criteria applied, you instructed them to fill it out this way because you knew you were going to use a loophole to approve them for more money. So you set me up, and you're responsible for growing the economy of the city. Now, on this third one, nothing fucking matters anyways because they're a nonprofit. And in the regulations, they spell out the definition of a nonprofit. Now, in the financial world, anytime you hear the nonprofit, you're immediately like, well, what do you mean by nonprofit? Like, you got to be more specific. Not all nonprofits are the same, but to the public, most people, when they say nonprofit, they think charity. Mm-hmm. But there's different kinds, and this one is a 501c8. It is a fraternal benefit society. That organization does not exist to serve the public. It only serves the benefit of the members. So that would be, different Elks Lodge, Masonic temples, all those ones that they exist for the members. Now, they do a lot of great work in the community, but that's not their primary function. Their primary function is to serve the members. So I said, in the regulations, it is very, very clear. Only 501c3s, which are charities, and 501c19s, which are veterans organizations, are eligible to receive funding. Every other kind of nonprofit is ineligible. So you guys gave them more money, and it doesn't matter what they put on the application. It doesn't matter what the justification is, because they were completely ineligible for money regardless of reason. There is no purpose in which you can give them money. So they quit responding to me. Like, oh, okay, fuck this guy. We're gonna pretend like this never happened. So I go, yeah, they're not gonna. And I knew it right away. I'm like, they're not responding to this one. I see you guys have committed a misappropriation of funds. What you have done is illegal. You cannot do it. Now, maybe no one looks into it, but you have two choices. Well, really, you only have one choice. You got to go get that money back from them. And they've already spent it. They spent it to go paint the building. So they've already spent the money. You're not going to be able to recoup it from them, but you have to. Or you change the accounting so it comes out of the general fund, and you open those funds back up to another business. Or you do nothing, and you're going to get crushed in the court of public opinion because you know what you did was wrong. You cannot give it to a councilman who didn't even have a business location in March of 2020. And then all the gyms that had to shut down get snubbed. You can't get away with that. You have no way to come out in front of everyone and tell everyone about it. So when I sent that last one, I'm like, yeah, they're not going to respond. I'm going to have to go to the city council meeting. So I show up to the city council meeting. Well, after emailing the whole council, the mayor, everyone else, I show up at the city council meeting. I lay the whole thing out. You only got 5 minutes to speak. And everyone's looking at me like, oh shit, it sounds good, but dude, I don't know what the hell you just said right there. All right, that's fine. So no one calls me, no one emails me, no one says anything. So I go to the next meeting. I'm like, all right, you guys are going to hear about this at every single meeting until I get as much money as the city councilman. There's absolutely no way you're giving it to that guy selling people barbecue when he didn't even have to shut down, while I'm out busting my ass making people healthier, and I had to do workouts in the parking lot in 100-degree heat because you guys thought that was safer than working out inside. So no. I said, this is first, of course I want the money. I'm not going to say I don't want the money.
Yeah.
But the principal aspect of it means I will die on this hill. I am fully prepared to die on this hill. I'm going to enjoy I'm going to enjoy the money, but from a principal standpoint, I'm dying on this hill. So I go to the next one and lay the whole thing out. And then they're like, oh shit. Then the third one, another gym owner, because I had to go to the CrossFit games, and you can write in a public comment to the city council. But after I showed up at the first meeting, and the reason I know they knew they fucked up was after I showed up at the first meeting, for the next meeting, they put a big notice on the council agenda that they're not going to read written in public comment. Because during COVID, we gave them a hard ass time. And when they ignored us and they ignored us again, all of our gym members started sending in letters to the council, which they had to read publicly, the whole time.
Yeah.
And the mayor in 2020 got his feelings hurt because I had a templated letter all of our gym members set up. So they had to read almost the same letter a bunch of times. I said, Wuhan, China was shut down for 76 days. Today is day 76. And I can see all their CrossFit gyms open. Tomorrow is day 77. So tomorrow, this city officially becomes more difficult to do business in than Wuhan, China. And the mayor he got his feelings so hurt about it. And I said, well, what do you got your feelings hurt? They were shut down for 76 days. There's people working out. We're going to be shut down tomorrow for 77 days, and we're still not allowed to work out. You don't have to get emotional about it. And if you're that emotional, when you get to these county meetings, do something about it. Talk about it. Actually advocate for us instead of just sit on your hands when you go to these meetings. Of course, we're going to give you a hard time because you're not doing anything. Mm-hmm. I know you don't have the ability to allow us to open. That's not the point. The point is to demonstrate to everyone you don't want us to open and that you're not doing anything to help us out. So I show up at that first meeting. They put a big notice on the agenda. We will not read public comments. So when I see that for the second meeting, I'm like, oh yeah, they know. I was like, they know they fucked up and they're going to try to cover their ass on this because they know, what's going to happen right here. So for the third meeting, I had to have another gym owner come in and read my letter for me because I said, hey, these assholes aren't going to read my letter. They're going to ignore it. So he comes in and everyone can tell that they're, before he even says, hey, this was actually from me. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows it's from me. They know all the topics I've been going over. So finally, one of the council people says, hey, we've had someone come in from the community the last couple meetings, ask for this information. I guess back in December, when they approved this program, they said, hey, we're going to do a report on this in 6 to 7 months to evaluate the success. And she's like, I have to agree with him. It's been 8 months and we don't have that report. And I don't see a reason why, we can't do it. So I'm asking that, hey, at the next meeting, we have this report ready to go. And they ask for it. And at the next one, they come up with this report. Now, each of these meetings, I had asked for, the same basic stuff. It was a list of the businesses that received money, the amount, the date they initially applied, the date the check went out, and I can't remember the other couple ones. But that's all public info. If I was to make a public records request, they would have to disclose that information. And they don't know that someone already did. I had someone else make that request months ago. So I already have all this information. I'm like, I know what it is. I was checking the check register prior to this. It's that I want you guys to come out and publicly tell everyone what happened. Because when I say it, they're just going to think I'm crazy. Because this corruption and this shit that you guys are doing is so out of hand that to tell people about it, it sounds crazy. So you guys are going to do it. And I know you're going to do everything in your power not to release this list, even though you would have to disclose it as a public records request, because the very first name on there, oh, that's a city councilman. Oh, it's the maximum amount. Oh, hey, we screwed all these people in favor of him. So they come out and they put out the wimpiest, most shitty report that's like 2 pages and says nothing. And they try to defend the nonprofit issue, which is like, look, this is, the reading level that you need to understand that regulation is not even like cat in the hat level. We're not talking about like complicated, jargon. There's a specific section, definition of a nonprofit, only 501c3s and 501c19s. Now, if you have some basic reading, you have some basic math. Oh, that's a 501c8. That's not the same thing as these 2 things that are allowed. Okay, you can't do it. So they try to make up all these excuses. They go back and forth. The one council person who is asking some pretty basic questions, finance director's getting all worked up. They start arguing in front of everyone, fighting back and forth, cutting each other off. And I'm like, man, you guys look like morons. I'm like, this is great. I'm like, you guys bickering back and forth, and she gets to the best part of the whole thing. And she's like, look, maybe I'm just stupid. Maybe I'm just dumb and I can't understand this stuff. And I'm dying laughing because I'm at the CrossFit games, getting ready to walk in to go to dinner because we're ahead of time. I'm like, oh man, they could not make themselves look any worse right here, bickering over this stuff. And they try to delay it. Now they're trying to wait 3 months to come out and report on all that stuff that I had. And so obviously I'm going to be at the next one. And at this one, I'm going to say, look, you're not stupid. And, I checked the mirror. I'm not stupid. I don't see stupid written on my forehead. Every last bit of confusion about the whole program has come from the city. The Treasury released 400 plus pages of regulation. It is like the most clear-cut federal program they have. It spells out everything that is and is not allowed. And they have given out money in a way that is explicitly not allowed. It says it right here. But they're making it confusing because then they can bullshit you and act like, oh, this is so complicated and all this other stuff. And they brought up a point like, well, their excuse was, there's a compliance period. They dole out the grants. Then afterwards, there's a compliance piece where you have to satisfy, number of requirements. It's like, well, we don't really know the total number yet because we don't know if we're going to have money coming back. And just the excuses that you're looking at, like, come on, dude, this is embarrassing. And the real reality of it is, look, you guys are dragging your feet and making excuses. And I know, and you know why you don't want to let people know who got what money. But if you don't do that, let's look at what happens if I'm right. Maybe, I can be an idiot. That's certainly possible, but we're talking about this specific issue. Personally, I think, I'm not going to view myself. Let's just look at it objectively. You guys have a chartered financial analyst that has brought up these concerns, provided you supporting documentation for every single piece. Now, what happens if I'm right? Well, just like you guys can get money back from the people you gave the grants to, the Treasury can get that money back from you guys. And so you guys are now introducing this large element of risk to the city's finances because you refuse to follow the regulation. You refuse to listen to professionals who do this kind of work and understand those regulations. And they might take that money back. And it's all going to be your guys' fault because you've been provided this for now months. You've been given this information. You've been given all the supporting documentation to understand what occurred. And you refuse to disclose it or look into it. And so if that money's taken back by the Treasury, it's your fault now. I tried to give them an out. I tried to make it where, hey, you guys aren't responsible. These people fucked up. And it's your job to hold them accountable and say, hey, we need you to explain this and what happened. But because you refuse to do that, now all of you guys are responsible. Now that's on you. You're going to be the reason why that money goes back to the Treasury. And so that's my next speech is, hey, if I'm right, and if we're being fair, the odds looking at it are in my favor. It's your guys' ass. Now, do you like them that much? I don't like that many people that much. So we are continuing to fight, but we're talking, we're talking almost 3.5 years after COVID started, that for people in California, you're still battling. You're still going through these kind of things, which people who don't own a business, we had people at the time, they're like, oh, well, why don't you just file for unemployment? Because business owners don't get unemployment insurance. That's why. And they were like, what do you mean? No, that's not how it works. That's only if you're an employee. The business owner's screwed. So we were explaining all these things early on that people had no clue about, that were like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, yeah, that's why they don't want to shut down, dude.
Yeah.
Well,
the important thing is, people across the whole country bitch about corruption, right?
Mm-hmm.
So federal corruption and all the other stuff, but we can't do a whole lot about federal corruption.
Yeah.
But you can if it's at the local level, right? So if it starts at the local level and you see something that you think is corruption, you should fight back against that. Because ultimately, if everybody did that everywhere, then it would work its way up.
Yeah. People are afraid to stand up and say anything. But, if one person does it, there's the whole concept of 0 to 1 versus 1 to many. That first person to say something, that first person to come in and say, hey, this is bullshit, you guys are wrong. Now everybody piles on, oh, I'm not going to be the guy, that does it. And to me, I'm like, I don't give a shit. I'll be that guy. You guys were wrong. You fucked all of us. Even from the first step where you decided that the city gets 90% of the money and businesses get 10%. Come on, that's an insult. Then on top of that, you couldn't give away free money. Then on top of that, they wrote the rules, as a thank you for shutting down. Like, they wrote this program for corruption, but you can't call it corruption because it's all by the book.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, you guys are so corrupt. You can't even follow the guidelines of a program built for corruption. Like, they put all these rules in here that you're looking at the rules and you're like, Jesus, that is bullshit. Like, how can they use the money for that? Like, you guys couldn't even follow those rules. Like, you couldn't follow the rules which were set out as a thank you for keeping the city closed. Like, that's the level you guys are at.
Wow. I think we broke a podcast time PR. So is the best way to get a hold of you your Instagram?
Yeah.
All
Send
right.
a DM and I will get back as soon as possible.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming out. This has been a great time. Any final thoughts?
No, I appreciate it. EliteFTS has done a lot for the strength training community, and live, learn, pass on isn't just something that they talk about. It's something that they embody all the time. So because I was a beneficiary of that stuff that they were doing early on, the first 5-10 years of what they put out, that's my main purpose of being here today, is that as some of these guys, move on to different phases of their life, the next crew of guys have to step up and fill that void and perform the rules that they used to perform. And so I'm here to pass on anything that I've learned and anything that they've helped me understand. I put my own little spin on it or add a little bit to it through experience. But I have a deep sense of gratitude for everything that EliteFTS has done, and just want to give back in the same way that they helped me.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And we're done. You guys are selecting Merrick for your telehealth platform needs. They have a couple different ways that they go about doing this. The first is through a self-selected experience. There's a table talk panel, which is the full panel. That would be the panel that I personally get twice a year. That's checking everything. You name it, it's all there. The other panel is a checkup panel with a guided optimization. You're connected with a patient care coordinator, and the patient care coordinator will meet with you to determine what your needs are, thing to be able to help optimize your health or mitigate without judgment. So the discount code again is Table Talk Merrick Health for all your hormone optimization and performance needs. Today's episode is brought to you by Element, a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything that you need and nothing that you don't. In other words, no sugar, no artificial coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, and no BS. With Element, I love the watermelon. The watermelon tastes freaking awesome. I drink 1 pack every day, no matter what. People that train out here, it's sitting out here for them all the time. The boxes don't last very long. Right now, Element is offering Table Talk listeners a free sample pack with any purchase. That's 8 single serving packages free with any Element order. Get yours at drinkelement.com/tabletalk. The deal is only available through the link in the description. The other thing is, if you don't like it, you can just give it away to a salty friend and Element will give you a 100% refund. No risk, money back guarantee. Head over to drinkelement.com/tabletalk. Today's episode is brought to you by First Attachment. Are you looking for a supplement brand that truly understands hardworking athletes? Look no further than First Attachment. 1D's real world experience is what I would consider, and they consider, battle tested. I have known Justin Harris for pretty close to 2 decades. And if there's anybody that I trust with nutritional and supplement needs, it's Justin Harris. If you guys have followed me and have followed the podcast, you pretty much already know how I feel about the supplement industry. For me to get behind any brand, I have to trust the brand and I have to trust the person both. And I'm pretty sure you guys all know why. When it comes to creating formulas and putting products on the market, and there's nobody that I trust more than Justin Harris. While I love all of their products, I'd suggest that you check out the Field Rations and WTH first. Go to www.firstdetachment.com and use the code TableTalk10 to save 10% off each order. The link is in the description.